Welcome back to another Jazz basketball breakdown. Close game, kind of an interesting game tonight. We talked about right before this. There wasn't really any huge glaring kind of performances or anything it felt like throughout the game, but overall close battle, which we need to be in.
Absolutely, we need games like this. And New Orleans is a team that has struggled to close out games. It would have been nice to see us, be able to be a little bit sharper down at the closing stages. But this is part of the formula for growth,
For sure.
So, Trey Murphy ends up coming up and hitting a couple of big threes down the stretch. Ingram has a big bucket. Before the last 2 minutes, there was a stretch of probably 3 minutes where Chris Dunn was playing amazing
down the stretch. And he really, you talked about several times on the show, is Chris Dunn is a type of player when you get into a playoff-like game that you can rely on because the physicality, the defense, those things start to get closer, tighter, less room for error. And he subs in with like 5 minutes left, and he goes through a stretch where we make a run, and he has like several big-time defensive stops, couple big-time plays on offense. Like
it's a three.
Yeah, it's a three, which is huge from Chris Dunn.
He even stripped Dyson Daniels down towards the end, but just kind of pinballed around and ends up going, and they hit a shot out of it. But that was another steal that he had. I mean, he pump fakes and drives into the bucket and lays it off for Kessler for a dunk. I mean, big-time plays. That was fun.
That was awesome to see. And something we talked about, right? When we starting to get these games, what players' games will translate to the physicality of it.
To the real, when it gets to the end of the game, to the real hard NBA finishes, which are a preparation for playoffs.
And that's the thing is, you like to see Markkanen be able to be in these kinds of positions if he's really going to be the star, right? And he struggled with his three-point shot, but he attacked the physicality of the game.
Absolutely.
He down the stretch, his three wasn't falling, but man, he had several super hard takes to the rim where he gets fouled, ends up knocking down all of his free throws down the stretch, makes a couple good plays defensively, and is hustling, just barely not there on a couple of the shots, but he needs to be able to grow through these kinds of things.
Absolutely. And go back to a year ago, middle of last season, he wouldn't have accepted the physical challenge as much as he is right now.
Yeah.
And from a year before that, he'd grown, big time. So there are very positive cues out of him in handling the physicality, because it's very much a part of New Orleans' game plan to rough him up. You saw that when Herbert Jones would be on him, he was making sure that off the ball he was popping him, and Markkanen was giving it right back too, right? And then on the defensive end, having to handle Zion Williamson, who cares for a little bit right now and is pretty darn good when he cares.
Yeah. When he actually tries, is freaking unstoppable.
He's a monster.
Which is interesting, though, right? We say that, and he had a huge game. Him and Markkanen's numbers were almost identical.
Yep. Very similar.
Shows you what type of player Markkanen can be on a night that you look at and you're like, man, Markkanen or Zion dominated this. And then at the same time you looked at it and you're like, Markkanen kind of struggled tonight.
Perspective, right?
So,
yep. Very true. But I love him being in those physical matches like that and not, backing off. We know that he has that fight in him, and his game is evolving. It is growing. We've seen a few shows out there this week talking about Markkanen being traded or whatever. We even had some interesting comments on our last show.
Yeah.
About, some of his fellow Finns talking about where they'd like to see him go or not go. We don't want him to go anywhere.
Yeah, we want him in Utah.
Yeah, he needs to stay in Utah.
So funny you say that. I actually was reading something today that was talking about a couple of NBA executives were talking about Markkanen, and that they think it is wishful thinking for any team to think that Markkanen's going anywhere, because the main three reasons are: one, that he loves Utah; two, that he can sign an extension with us at a pretty good contract; and three, Utah loves him. That Utah wants him to be here and wants to build a team with him.
and this is something that he hasn't had in any other location he's played.
And
right?
then it's and somebody even commented that the league's NBA is a business, and for the right trade that's 100% the right offer comes across, and Danny Ainge has even said that. The only thing is the right offer right now is what the Timberwolves gave us for Rudy Gobert. If you want to give us 4 or 5 first rounders and 4 other players, then we can have a conversation.
Right. Then we can talk, which is obviously a steep asking price because we don't want him to go anywhere.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's just like Lauri said in an interview last year. He's like, Danny Ainge told me to buy a house, so I went and bought a house. In his monotone voice. So I bought a house.
But no, the last thing I wanted to kind of talk about with him on this game was a big part about him being able to accept that role is actually having guys like Tucker, Clarkson and stuff, those guys off the court towards the end of the game, because then we have to go to Markkanen. Yeah, we could go to Collin Sexton, and Sexton played a really good game. There's no question about that.
He did.
But let's allow Markkanen to be the go-to guy and have to and get challenged.
I would even take it a step farther. If Markkanen, right now, if Markkanen were to play most of his minutes on the court with Chris Dunn, Keontae George, Collin Sexton, Ochai Agbaji, these other players that will move the ball and get it to him. Kelly Olynyk has been great at getting him the ball too. He would average 30 points a game right now.
Easily.
Because the top defenders on Lauri Markkanen in this league of ours happen to wear the same uniform.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. And, and tonight was a night that he easily could have scored 30 if his shot was falling.
Sure, yeah.
And so
35 plus.
Yes.
So those are the averages.
Yeah, it was so awesome to see that. I was very happy that we closed in that way. Speaking of how we closed, that's also how we started.
Interesting. What we all thought was going to be the starting lineup from day one. Well, it actually was a starting lineup day one. Until Kessler got injured, kind of.
Well, for the bigs.
Right. Got to read my mind on part of it. With Markkanen, John Collins, and Kessler. And there are some times that we have some hiccups, but also I was glad to see Will Hardy try and close with that group as well.
Yeah.
And the way that they got out there and fought. The physicality down low. Kessler didn't seem like he was at his top level of game out there tonight, but he was affecting a lot of shots, and he was causing a lot of turnovers before they even got to the shot.
Right. So it's funny though with Kessler is like he almost seems to put up his better numbers off the bench. I don't know. He's got a weird season going on right now. That he's got some stuff that he has to fight through. This was John Collins' better game defensively for Collins than we've seen. Because I could see us closing down the stretch with, instead of Collins, Kelly Olynyk or Agbaji or something like that. You couldn't close with Olynyk tonight because he sucked. But that's something you probably would normally see, in my opinion, depending on who's playing the better out of those types of players.
Olynyk really struggles with some of these matchups. Obviously, Zion Williamson is a handful, and that's matches up perfectly with his glaring weakness of his mobility defensively. And Brandon Ingram as well. And Brandon Ingram looked quite explosive out there. You know that he's a player that has a lot of injuries a lot of times, and he kind of looks like he's playing, somewhat injured, but he looked like he had some explosiveness. Chris Dunn really took that matchup to heart and really bothered him on what he was doing a lot. Same with C.J. McCollum. Dunn was a stud out there.
It was a good game by Dunn. And it was a really good game by Collin Sexton. Honestly, like his game seems to be changing. He is being less ever, honestly, since he's been put in the starting lineup, but even during this kind of the last 9 games where we're now 6-3 in the last 9. Way less just head down, searching for my own shot. There's times when he does that, and there's times when you need to do that. He seems to be understanding those times better and controlling more of actually moving the ball more.
He still takes advantage of those windows where he is super effective getting in and putting pressure on the rim, getting into the lane, scoring buckets, and exercising physical feats that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
For that dude, I mean, it is insane what that guy does. It's crazy, and I understand that this is a league of freaks, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like that, but among the freaks, he's the freak. It's crazy what he does. I've really been impressed with the amount of times that it looks like he's going in out of control, and he makes a controlled pass.
Right.
And it's not just in transition, and it's not just in half court, but it's just kind of in all facets of play. He's really impressing me this year. The way that he's going seemingly into a level that we didn't really think was going to be normal for him to sustain.
Yeah.
And he still has a high 3-point percentage, very high free throw percentage.
Dude, he's like top 10 free throw percentage.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like
I was looking at all the stats today for certain players and stuff, and when I was going through all like the league leaders, when I got the free throw percentage, he was like top 10, maybe top 15, and I did not realize he was that high.
And I guess maybe it shouldn't surprise us, but usually players that are physically impactful, that look like they've snorted a full kilo of meth before the game, his energy level is just insane. Usually don't have those calm nerves in the free throw. It usually doesn't translate that way, so it's nuts. It's good for him, man.
It's been super exciting to see. Now let's talk about some of the bad. The problem with and why I could see Will Hardy unwilling to start Walker Kessler is now with the guys on our bench, you have Kelly Olynyk, Jordan Clarkson, and Keontae George all coming on the court at the exact same time. And that is a rough defensive lineup. And honestly, this was Clarkson's worst turnover game of the year. And by that, I don't necessarily mean numbers-wise, even though he had higher numbers turnovers-wise. I mean the types of turnovers he had. He just looked lost. And I expect that on the defensive end. Offensively, it was just like every pass, it seemed like, it's like, what are you doing?
Ended up having 6 turnovers. And the shot wasn't really falling. I do appreciate that down the stretch, Hardy took him out. That was the right call.
Yes.
You're right. There were some real times of struggle, along with, like you said, it seemed like this game we had longer stretches of a really poor defensive lineup out there.
It's truthfully part of the reason why, even though it's so hard to make an argument for it, why Keontae George needs to be starting and Chris Dunn needs to be coming off the bench. So then you're not bringing Clarkson and Keontae on the court at the same time.
It's true.
Because truthfully, right now, Keontae looks like he's kind of reset back to the start of the year, rookie-wise. He missed some time. That's expected. He still had a good stretch tonight.
He did.
Where he had several, where he just ran the offense and looked really good.
Yep.
The biggest reason why I'm such a very big advocate for Clarkson being traded is because when we play Keontae George and Jordan Clarkson, Keontae George's worst habits come out. And I think someone even commented on our last video about that. Keontae George, when on the court with Clarkson, all of a sudden doesn't put in as much effort defensively, and when he does, it's kind of the lazy jump past and lunge kind of defense that you see out of Tucker and Clarkson and stuff like that. But also, he gets a little bit more dribble happy offensively as well. A lot of his bad habits happen when he's on the court, sharing the court with Clarkson. And
that happens with all the players when they're on there with him, because the ball stops. It kind of stops the flow. That's something that happens.
The development of Keontae George is a huge part on why I'm such an advocate for why I think we have to trade Jordan Clarkson.
I agree, and I think that we are better right now. If Chris Dunn was starting a better team, we would win more.
Yes.
But I agree that it's the smart move to start Keontae, have Chris Dunn coming in running the backups.
I've also, and there's things I've also, we both openly said, we're okay with not winning games right now, it depends on how you don't win the game. I'm okay with taking losses every game this year if it means that we are developing our young players like Keontae George.
we said right from the start that we understand that we would win less games, that it would result in more losses doing that, and it's okay. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try and win. It doesn't mean that we don't want to fight out there in the group. This was a game where, Fontecchio was out there sick, and he, played kind of sparingly, still put out great effort. Agbaji was still playing strong on defense, but really wasn't getting in the flow of getting the shots. And
this was one
out of the flow.
Yeah, this was one of his worst performances, in my opinion. Even on the defensive side of the court, he had some good plays defensively, but he seemed to, and like our whole team kind of did, seem to be just a step late on a lot of stuff tonight.
Yep, and so it was an interesting matchup. It was a team that New Orleans that kind of changed their philosophy, like Smith. What's the one announcer's guy's name?
Mike Smith.
Mike Smith, yeah. Mentioned that after the first quarter, New Orleans changed their defensive philosophy and changed it up a little bit on us. These are things that we needed to see. It's a situation where our normally productive defensive wing players are also productive, very productive on the offensive side. They weren't today. We kind of still had the versatility to put out a different lineup towards the end and be in the fight at the end of the game. To me, those are all positives.
Yeah.
And there's some things that I still want to see, but man, it seems like we're miles ahead of where we were 10 games ago.
Right. And that's the thing, is even a game like tonight where you lose and you kind of look at it and it's just kind of like, man, we lost this game, but we kind of just lost it because we couldn't really make shots. We played horribly defensively in the first quarter, which comes back out, not just with the guys who subbed in, with that starting lineup as a concern, right? Because we allowed a lot of points in the first quarter, but then kind of settled down. And so I'd like us to still continue to try that lineup to see if it's even worth it, but obviously it didn't work tonight. But it was just one of those games where it's like, man, we lost, but we almost just shot ourselves in the foot, and that's why we lost. We lost because we couldn't make wide open threes. We couldn't make wide open buckets, and couldn't take advantage of when we have a loose ball. We foul Zion Williamson. He goes to the free throw line, and we just shoot ourselves in the foot again by not getting a defensive rebound on a free throw, which is unacceptable at the end of a game.
Yeah, you got to have those, especially a team like ours.
Which is a young team mistake. It's a team that's trying to learn how to win mistake. And that's what you have to do with this game, is as a coach, as a staff, be able to take this game and say, these are the moments you guys had this game. You guys could have won this game easily. You didn't lose this game because New Orleans came out and had an incredible game or had some superstar go off that just made incredible shots. No, you lost the game because you lost the game. They didn't win it. You lost it.
We ended up losing it. A lot of unnecessary turnovers. I think we ended up with 19 turnovers.
A lot of really bad turnovers in the first half.
Yeah. And I think Clarkson had 6 of those.
Olynyk had to have several as well.
Olynyk had several. It seemed like Larry Nance, flat-footed, can block every pass Olynyk tries to make.
Which is weird because that's Olynyk's strength, right, is passing. So, like I said, this was one of those games that it was less about the other team beating us and more about us just kind of beating ourselves. And that's going to happen in a season like this. That's going to happen in any season, but especially seasons that you're more rebuild mode and trying to learn how to win. You run into that more often.
And the Pelicans are known as a team that when they are healthy and clicking, they're a dangerous team. Mm-hmm. They're a team that can they made it to the semifinals of the in-season tournament, right? They ended up getting smacked by the Lakers, but they're a team that they've got Trey Murphy back now. I think they have everybody back healthy. That when they're fully healthy, they're a good team. And they were making shots. They ended up making shots down the stretch. There was a stretch there though up until from about the 5-minute mark to the 2-minute mark where we had them on their heels. It felt like we were going to snatch.
I thought during that stretch, there's no way we lose this game.
And we were in a situation where we make a couple more of those shots. We're a little bit more, judicious with the ball. Like you said, no silly mistakes down the stretch. That's a young team thing. Get those rebounds, secure it. But I thought that we had the guys with the look in their eye like we were going to take it. Mm-hmm. So you don't really sit there and talk about moral victories all day long, but I think we're a completely different team than we were 10, 12 games ago.
Yeah. Top to bottom, we have made a lot of adjustments and changed. Players are changing their style of game. Mm-hmm. It's been really good to see. It's been really good to see. really bad to see is that we decided to give Taylor Horton Tucker some minutes tonight, and they were bad minutes.
I would still like to see Taylor Hendricks getting some minutes.
Yeah.
Let's get that guy some minutes somewhere, man.
Either G League and maybe the G League season might be on a break right now, which makes sense because Bryce Sensabaugh is also traveling with the team. So maybe they're on break right now. But yeah, the one thing that hurts us being healthy is we don't get to see heavier minutes with some of the guys we actually want to see and develop.
And we've got, I mean, it's a super hard team to coach because we've got 12, 13 players that you can make arguments that should be on the court.
Right.
How hard is that as a coach, right?
Right.
And you're sitting there looking at pros and saying, sorry, can't play you, even though you've played every game up until now.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's tough. That's brutal. So, but I love where the team's at. Love where it's going. These are the kind of games we need on the road. This feels like a game that we would have lost by 25 early in the season.
And that's the thing.
This feels like we're
this is one of those games you don't really spend a whole lot of time on afterwards. You just focus. Hey, there's a couple things here that we need to get better on. But man, we've come a freaking long way than the first 10 games of the season. So
Absolutely.
Let's continue to take the things we need to learn on and you move on from this type of game.
Yeah, absolutely. Still was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Nice fight on the road. That's what we need.
Yep. Overall positives from the game, even though we didn't get a win. Those are differences from the start of the year, And so keep the comments coming. You guys kind of, compared to our normal views, blew out that last video, and
very cool.
A lot of the comments and stuff. It was super fun to be able to watch the battles back and forth there. And so we love it.
I'd love to hear from some more of the Finns. Just about, I kind of compared down the stretch as Markkanen sometimes doesn't take all the shots and doesn't have as high usage as he possibly could. I felt there was a difference this year in the World Cup over this past summer compared to the year before.
When he exploded.
When he blew up.
Yeah.
It seems like there was a lot more usage by other players on the Finnish national team. I didn't watch all the games, full games. I watched, some of them were highlights. But it seems like he had a lot less usage. And sometimes that's, he's kind of a humble guy to a fault, seems like, right? Sometimes he doesn't snatch the ball and he's not an alpha, rip your head off kind of guy, which means he's a good dude in real life.
Right.
Right? But it seems like almost there was less usage going through him this summer's team, the Finnish national team. And sometimes we run into that out there as a team as well with the Jazz, right?
Yeah.
Where he should be having 20-plus shots a game, and sometimes he's 12 to 15 shots and extremely high efficiency.
Right.
I'd be interested to hear some of your guys' comments on that, just as I was thinking about it, just about kind of the last couple FIBA experiences with Finland.
Yeah. Let us know. Thanks, guys.